In the heart of SpaceX's most secret facility, located somewhere between the Mojave Desert and the imagination of a Mars-obsessed billionaire, Elon Musk adjusted the controls of a device that would make any sci-fi fan drool. The lab looked like something straight out of a Marvel movie, and that was no coincidence. Armored glass walls reflected floating holograms that danced in the air like technological ghosts. Blue lasers cut the environment into hypnotic patterns, while transparent screens displayed equations that would make Einstein scratch his head. But what really drew attention was the reverent silence with which Musk worked. Something rare for a man who used to tweet jokes about aliens at 3 a.m. "Jarvis, activate Protocol Stark," Elon murmured to the lab's AI system. "Protocol not recognized, Mr. Musk," a synthetic voice replied with a slight British accent. "Of course it's not recognized, you outdated processor. That's because it doesn't exist yet." Elon laughed to himself, typing commands at an impressive speed. "But it will exist. Oh, yes." Suddenly, a golden light began to pulse in the center of the lab. The holograms rearranged themselves, forming a human silhouette that gradually gained definition. When the light stabilized, there he was, Howard Stark, founder of Stark Industries, genius behind Captain America's shield, and father of the man who would become Iron Man. There was just one small problem. Howard Stark had died in 1991. "Well," said Howard's holographic figure, adjusting his perfectly trimmed mustache and checking his vintage wristwatch, "that was unexpected. Though I must admit, I always knew someone would be crazy enough to try this one day." Elon almost dropped the tablet he was holding. It worked. It worked. I knew that combining quantum AI with historical shield archives and a dash of, well, let's call it technological creativity could resurrect a dead man? Howard interrupted, examining his own translucent hands. "Technically, Mr. Musk, I wouldn't say I'm alive. More like a digitally reconstructed consciousness based on archived neural patterns. But who's counting the details, right?" "You're really here," Elon shouted, doing a bizarre dance that should never be witnessed by another human being, living or digitized. Howard chuckled. "Relax, kid. You're going to give me a digital heart attack. Now, tell me one thing. Why did you bring me back? And don't give me that 'I've always admired your work' line. All inventors say that." Elon composed himself, trying to look professional but failing miserably with the grin of a kid in a candy store plastered on his face. "Howard Stark, I have a problem. A problem only you can help me solve." "Ah, now we're getting somewhere." Howard crossed his spectral arms. "Let me guess, it involves rockets, doesn't it? It's always about rockets with you rookies." "It's not just rockets," Elon protested. It's about doing something no one has ever done before," Howard completed, his tone growing more serious. "Something that defies the very laws of physics and logic. Something so crazy it would only work if you were a complete genius or completely insane." "Exactly, and I'm both." Howard let out a genuine laugh. "I like you, Musk. You've got style. Now show me what you want to do." Elon activated the central hologram. A massive rocket materialized in the air between them, sleek, powerful, yet strangely familiar. "This is the next-gen Falcon Heavy," Elon explained, gesturing like a TV presenter selling miracle products, capable of carrying 64 tons to low Earth orbit. "But here's the kicker. After delivering the payload, it comes home," Howard murmured, his eyes gleaming with recognition. "Exactly. But not just that. It lands, standing up, like in the old sci-fi movies." Howard walked around the hologram, studying every detail. "Vertical landing, Flash Gordon style. You know that's technically impossible, right? The precision required, the fuel control, the stability." "Impossible is what they said about electric cars that weren't slow and ugly," Elon retorted. "Impossible is what they said about reusing rockets. Impossible is my specialty." "Touché." Howard paused and turned to Elon with a mischievous grin. "But you know what I see here? A revolutionary rocket? A stolen idea." The lab went silent. Even the computers seemed to stop functioning for a moment. "Excuse me, what?" Elon blinked several times. Howard burst out laughing. "Relax, kid. I'm not accusing you of plagiarism. I'm saying you stole an idea from me from 1943. With a theatrical flourish, Howard brought up his own hologram. It was an old technical drawing, hand-drawn on yellowed paper, a rocket landing vertically with stabilization jets on the sides. "Project Vertical Return," Howard proudly announced. I developed this for Operation Rebirth. The idea was to create rescue vehicles that could land on any terrain, extract agents and take off again. It was never built because Howard Hughes said I was dreaming too big. Ironically, coming from a guy who built planes the size of cities, Elon was speechless. You invented this 70 years before me. Technically 81 years, but who's counting? Howard shrugged. The problem is, in 1943, we didn't have quantum computers, artificial intelligence, or super-strong composite materials. It was just a dream on paper. And now we have a digital ghost talking to a South African billionaire in a lab that looks like a Star Trek set. Howard chuckled. My God, how times have changed. Wait. Elon held up his hands, processing the information. You're telling me that my revolutionary idea of landing rockets upright is, in fact, one of your ideas from 8 decades ago? Howard adjusted his virtual tie. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds a bit embarrassing for you, doesn't it? Embarrassing? Elon started pacing, gesticulating wildly. This is fantastic. Do you know what this means? That you're not as original as you thought? No, it means I'm not crazy. It means great minds think alike. It means... Elon stopped abruptly. Wait, if you already thought of it, why didn't it work? Howard sighed, a melancholic expression crossing his holographic face. Ah, my young engineering Padawan, let me tell you about the 1940s. We had just figured out how to make airplanes that didn't explode in mid-air. Most of the time. Computers were the size of buildings and less intelligent than a modern calculator, and don't get me started on the materials available. But you had the right idea. Ideas are easy, Elon. Execution is hard. Do you know how many geniuses from my era had brilliant ideas that never left the paper? Howard made air quotes. Flying cars, underwater cities, time travel. Everyone was a visionary. But some of us actually make them happen, Elon murmured, looking at the Falcon Heavy hologram. Exactly, and that's why you brought me back, isn't it? Not to steal credit, but to collaborate, to take my 1940s vision and your 2020s technology and create something neither of us could have done alone. Elon slowly smiled. You get it. Of course I get it. I'm Howard Stark, baby. Now let's go make history. Howard approached the rocket hologram, his spectral hands passing through the projection. First thing, this design is all wrong. How is it wrong? Elon almost choked. This rocket has already flown, it's already landed, it already works. It works, but not with maximum efficiency. Look here, Howard pointed to the base of the rocket. You're using 9 engines on the first stage, right? Merlin engines, yes. Why? Too noisy, too flashy. In my day, subtlety was important. Do you want to impress the media, or do you want efficiency? Elon thought for a moment. Why not both? Howard chuckled. Now you're speaking my language, but listen. What if instead of 9 small engines we used 3 super-efficient engines with vector adaptive technology? Vector adaptive? That's not invented yet, I know. But you have quantum AI and I have 80 years of suppressed engineering fantasies. Together, we can create something that will make your Merlin engines look like firework rockets. Elon's eyes gleamed. Go on. Engines that adapt in real time to atmospheric conditions, that learn with each flight, that self-optimize. Engines that not only push the rocket, but talk to it. Conscious engines. Now you're getting it. And for landing? Howard made a dramatic gesture. Forget about burning fuel like crazy until the last second. What if we used magnetic levitation systems for the last few meters? Magnetic levitation? For a 500-ton rocket? Why not? You made electric cars when everyone said it was impossible. You made underground tunnels when everyone said you were crazy. You made a private space company when NASA struggled to launch a rocket without it exploding. Elon paused, processed the suggestion, and slowly began to smile. You know what, Howard? I think you might be right. Of course I'm right. I'm Howard Stark. Now let's redesign this baby from scratch. 3 hours later, the lab looked like it had been hit by a hurricane of creativity. Holograms floated everywhere. Equations covered every available and some unavailable surface. And Elon had consumed enough caffeine to power a small country. Howard, on the other hand, seemed to be having the time of his life, more fun than he'd had since the 1940s. No. Elon gestured frantically at a hologram showing the new rocket design. If we place the magnetic stabilizers at the base, the center of gravity will be completely unbalanced. Relax, Tesla kid, Howard chuckled. 1940s math might be old, but it still works. Look here. He manipulated the hologram, rearranging components. If we distribute the weight like this and adjust the vector propulsion this way, that will require insane computational power to calculate trajectories in real time. So what? Don't you have a Starlink satellite network orbiting Earth? Use them as a distributed neural network. Elon stopped mid-sentence. That's brilliant, insanely brilliant. Of course it is. I invented the concept of a distributed neural network in 1947. I called it multi-brain processing system. I just never got to implement it because computers back then had less processing power than a modern microwave. You really thought of everything, didn't you? Howard gave a nostalgic smile. My son Tony always said I was 50 years ahead of my time. Apparently he was conservative. The mention of Tony Stark made the air heavy for a moment. Elon knew the story. He knew about the sacrifice, about the snap, about how Tony had saved the universe. He'd be proud of you, Elon said softly. I hope so. He was always a better inventor than me, you know. More intuitive, more human. I was all about logic, about making things work. Tony made things work and made them matter. That's why we want this to work, right? Not just to prove we can, but because it will matter. Howard nodded. Exactly. Now enough sentimentality. We have an impossible rocket to build. They went back to work, but with a different dynamic. Competition had given way to collaboration. Ego had been replaced by a shared purpose. Okay, so we have adaptive engines, magnetic levitation for landing, a satellite distributed neural network. Elon ticked off on his fingers. What else? Fuel regeneration, Howard said casually. Fuel what now? Why carry all the fuel needed for landing if you can produce it during flight? Atmospheric CO2 capture, water vapor electrolysis, conversion to methane. You basically refuel on the way home. Elon was silent for long seconds. Howard, that's revolutionary. That would completely change the economics of spaceflight. I know. Cool, right? Cool? Cool? That's... Elon started his bizarre dance again. Not again, Howard groaned. My digital eyes can't take it. Do you realize that if we get this to work, we're going to make the entire current space industry obsolete? Good. Competition is healthy. Keeps everyone sharp. Blue Origin is going to freak out. Who? Jeff Bezos. The Amazon guy. He has a space company too. Howard frowned holographically. Amazon, is that the company that delivers books? It was. Now they deliver everything. And Bezos wants to compete with me in space. Ah, one of those, I want to be Elon Musk too types. I know the kind. In my day, it was Howard Hughes. Exactly. Except Bezos builds rockets that look, well, how can I put this politely? Like giant phalluses. Exactly. They both laughed until Howard wiped away non-existent digital tears. Well, Howard finally said, let's give them something to really worry about. 2 weeks later, in the middle of the Mojave Desert, an impossible structure rose against the clear morning sky. The new rocket, christened Stark Falcon, in honor of the historic collaboration, was both familiar and alien. It retained the aerodynamic elegance of SpaceX's designs, but incorporated elements that looked straight out of Stark Industries' 1940s labs. Art Deco lines mingled with cutting-edge technology in a combination that should have looked odd, but somehow worked perfectly. Status report, Elon said into his headset, watching the final preparations. All systems green, the mission control voice replied. Adaptive engines online, distributed neural network connected, magnetic landing systems on standby. Howard watched everything through a screen in the control bunker, his holographic form trembling slightly with anxiety. You know, for all those years being dead, I never thought I'd be nervous again. Are you scared? Elon asked, not taking his eyes off the monitors. Terrified. Are you? Me too. But it's the good kind of scared. Agreed. The kind that means we're about to do something important. To minus 60 seconds to ignition, Control announced. Howard, Elon said softly, no matter what happens in the next few minutes, I want you to know this was incredible. Working with you, learning from you has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. Howard smiled. For someone who spent decades dead, these past few weeks have been the most alive I've ever felt. No matter what happens, we did something no one thought possible. To minus 30 seconds. If this goes wrong, Elon began. It won't go wrong, Howard interrupted. We're too good to fail. To minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition! The Stark Falcon lifted off the pad like a metallic dragon awakening. But unlike previous launches, this one was almost silent. The adaptive engines modulated the sound to less disruptive frequencies. Beautiful, Howard murmured. Altitude 1,000 meters and climbing, Mission Control reported. First stage separation in 3, 2, 1, separation. The first stage smoothly detached from the second stage and began its journey back home. This time, however, something different happened. Instead of burning fuel like crazy to slow down, the rocket literally began to suck elements from the atmosphere. Fuel regeneration system active, the computer announced in a female voice that sounded suspiciously like the Stark Home AI. It's actually producing fuel during flight, Elon whispered, disbelieving. Of course it is, Howard replied proudly. Basic 1940s physics meets 2020s engineering. It was bound to work. The rocket continued its descent, now with partially refilled tanks. When it reached the last 100 meters of altitude, something magical happened. Activating magnetic levitation, the system announced. The Stark Falcon literally floated the last few meters, landing with the delicacy of a feather on a magnetically prepared pad. The control bunker erupted in celebration. Engineers hugged each other, technicians cried with joy, and someone started playing "We Are the Champions" over the sound system. Elon and Howard looked at each other across the screen, both with smiles that could light up Las Vegas. "We did it," Elon said, almost disbelieving. "Of course we did. We're Stark and Musk, baby." A week after the historic flight, Elon was in his office looking out the window at the Stark Falcon, now proudly resting in the SpaceX yard, like a monument to the impossible. Howard appeared beside him, his holographic projection more stable than ever. "So," Howard said, "what do we do now?" "We change the world," Elon replied simply. "More specifically?" Elon turned, his eyes gleaming with possibilities. "Mars, obviously, but not just as visitors. As permanent colonists, with fuel regeneration technology, we can establish a regular Earth-Mars trade route." News of the Stark Falcon's success reverberated around the world like thunder. Governments and traditional space agencies, such as NASA and ESA, initially reacted with a mix of admiration and skepticism, quickly followed by a race to understand and, if possible, replicate the technology. China and Russia announced accelerated research programs, while European and Asian consortia proposed partnerships with SpaceX. However, the most notable reaction came from Jeff Bezos. After an initial silence, Blue Origin released a series of press releases downplaying the achievement, claiming the technology was interesting but not scalable, and that their own projects followed a more robust and proven path. Behind the scenes, however, the pressure to catch up with SpaceX was immense. Rumors circulated that Bezos had doubled Blue Origin's R&D budget, and whispers began of aggressive attempts to hire SpaceX engineers and even reverse engineer public data from the Stark Falcon mission. "Bezos is furious," Elon commented to Howard, leafing through a market intelligence report. He called the Stark Falcon a media magic trick in an internal meeting. Howard chuckled, his holographic form adjusting imaginary glasses. "Ah, the old sour grapes trick. I know that tune well. It's the anthem of those who fall behind. In my day, it was Howard Hughes trying to discredit me over the spruce goose. He said I was an impractical dreamer. Look where that got him. Don't you miss your time, Howard, being the undisputed genius?" Elon asked, looking at the hologram. Howard sighed, a flicker of melancholy in his digital eyes. "Sure, I miss certain things. The simplicity, maybe. The jazz. But the truth, Elon, is that the isolation of being the only one is a burden. I had ideas that died with me because there wasn't the technology or the minds to carry them forward. Seeing you take one of my impractical fantasies and turn it into reality, that's something I never thought I'd experience. It's like seeing a son surpass his father, but in a way that fills you with pride. And Tony? Do you think he'd approve of all this?" "Tony, he was always the best of us," Howard said softly. "He had my mind for engineering, but with a heart I only started to understand too late. He'd make this work not just because it's possible, but because it's right. And yes, I think he'd be here, laughing at us, but also helping us optimize every screw. He was always better at making things matter. That's why we want this to work, right? Not just to prove we can, but because it will matter." Elon repeated Howard's words, a slight smile on his face. Exactly. Now enough sentimentality. We have a universe to conquer, Howard declared, clapping his spectral hands. Interesting. And after Mars? Elon asked, returning to his plans. Europa, Jupiter's moons, Titan. Why limit ourselves to the solar system? With advanced enough adaptive engine? You want to reach the stars. We want to reach the stars, Elon corrected him. This is a partnership, remember? Howard chuckled. Well, I'm a bit dead. I don't know if I can make reservations for interstellar flights. Technicalities. If we can get rockets to land using magnetic levitation, I'm sure we can figure out how to give you a physical body, Elon said with a gleam of new obsession in his eyes. A body that's more than a projection, that can touch, feel, interact with the world we're building. Howard blinked, the idea clearly catching him off guard. A physical body. Are you serious, Musk? That's a whole different level of impossible. Impossible is my specialty, remember. Think about it, Howard. If your consciousness is digitally reconstructed, we can transfer it to a biological or synthetic vessel. It would be the next great leap, not just for SpaceX, but for humanity itself. Immortality, or something very close to it. Now you're talking, Howard exclaimed, his excitement growing. I always wanted to meet aliens in person, not as a floating ghost, but the challenge is the neural compatibility, sensory integration, biological rejection. It's a much bigger mountain than Mars, and they'll love meeting you. A genius from the last century working with technology, from the future century. Elon smiled, already visualizing the next project. It would be the ultimate proof that there are no limits to what the human mind can achieve, especially when two of them, from different eras, come together. They remained silent for a moment, contemplating the infinite possibilities that stretched before them. The weight of their ambitions was immense, but the prospect of facing those challenges together was electrifying. Elon, Howard said finally, can I ask you one thing? Sure. Why did you really bring me back? And don't give me that story about needing help with engineering. You're perfectly capable of figuring it all out on your own, eventually. Elon thought for a long moment before answering. Because sometimes being a genius is lonely. People see you as eccentric, crazy, impossible. They don't understand the vision. They don't share the obsession. And I wanted to work with someone who understood what it's like to have an idea so big it scares even you. Someone who wouldn't look at me like I had 3 heads when I talked about colonizing Mars or flying cars. And you found that in me? I found that in you. Plus, you invented half the things I wish I had invented. And you don't judge me when I do a weird dance. Howard smiled. And you built half the things I wish I had built. And you gave me a second chance at life, even if digitally, and to see the future I could only dream of. Perfect partnership, then. Perfect partnership. They watched the Stark Falcon gleam under the California sun, each lost in their own dreams about the future. Howard. Yes? Ready for the next impossible adventure? The physical body, then the stars? I was born ready, my friend. Born ready. 6 months later, the world had changed in ways no one could have foreseen. The Stark-Musk technology, as the media had dubbed it, not only revolutionized spaceflight but also inspired breakthroughs in renewable energy, terrestrial transport, and even medicine, with fuel regeneration adapted for large-scale air and water purification systems. The pressure on Blue Origin and other space companies was palpable, forcing them to innovate or seek collaborations. The first crewed mission to Mars using the combined technology was scheduled for the following year, and the SpaceX R&D team, now under Howard's holographic and genial supervision, was already working on the first prototypes for reconstructing a physical body for him. The challenges were immense, but the belief that impossible was just a word had deeply rooted itself. More important than any technological advancement, it was proof that when brilliant minds collaborated across time, space, and even death, there were no limits to what could be achieved. The partnership between the visionary of the past and the disruptor of the present was not just about rockets and stars, but about the very redefinition of human potential. In a secret desert laboratory, 2 of history's greatest minds continued to dream, create, and turn those dreams into reality. And this, dear readers, was just the beginning. And you, what do you think of this incredible journey of collaboration between geniuses? What other impossibilities should be challenged? What other visionaries from the past could contribute to the future we are building? Share your ideas in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation about how to turn the impossible into the inevitable. Thank you for joining this extraordinary adventure. Until the next impossible mission, the best way to predict the future is to invent it, especially when you have the help of a genius from the past. Elon Musk and Howard Stark.